Lecrae, man.
How's it going?
It's going good, man. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me for a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How's the pandemic been for you, man? How are the kids doing with all that?
Actually, in a weird way, they've just my daughter's struggling a little bit, but my boys, they just been skateboarding a lot, so they enjoy that. Actually, they've just been getting good at skateboarding.
Are they doing are you guys having to do homeschool, or are they in school, or like the split thing, or what's going on?
It's split, yeah, it's a split, so it's a mix. They'll rotate, so half the students can go to school while the other half stay home, and then they rotate those students out to every other day. So
Hmm.
we're on and off. So it's unique, but I mean, this is just we're adjusting.
My wife is like, man, these kids are going to have so much makeup to do. Like, they're going to be so far behind because, like, parents trying to stay on top of these schedules and the homework with these kids. My 15-year-old daughter came to me yesterday. She's like, I need help on math. I'm like, okay, no problem. I got this. Took one look at this sheet. I'm like, mm-mm, I don't know. I'm sorry, baby. I know it's 9:30 at night. You can't call your teachers, but I'm out. I got nothing for you. Good luck.
I felt the same way. It was like a couple nights ago. I tweeted like, "Why do we ever need algebra? I don't even remember why we needed this." 'Cause I was like,
When numbers and letters got together, like, that was just a bad idea for everybody.
I
Not
totally.
even cool. We're gonna have a few people joining in on us. This is Project 88.7. Some of our donors that are really zeroed in and help make this happen. It's kind of an exclusive thing for them. So Jackie's on. Hey Jackie, if you got a question, feel free to put it in the chat for Lecrae, and we'll hang out a little bit. Um, how like everything's got to been changed for you. Like, all of us, like, we're in, obviously in radio. We're supposed to have Tadashi out for a concert in the fall. Like, that guy, we had to cancel that. Um, all this kind of stuff, and like, it's changed so much for so many of us, and I know for you, like, obviously not touring near as much. What have you been doing to what have you been doing instead? What are the things that you're trying that you never would have done before if it hadn't been for the pandemic?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, it's been a bunch of different stuff. I mean, one, um, I'm like, they have soccer moms. I'm a skateboard dad now, so it's like, I'm carting my boys around the skate parks and letting them, empty parking lots and letting them do all kinds of stuff and sitting and watching them. I've definitely toyed with going back to school. I was already kind of dabbling in all types of different entrepreneurial ventures and stuff. So everything from kids cartoons to books to real estate. So it's just like professional dabbler, just like, all right, let's see what works here. So it's been a lot of crazy, lots of adventures over here.
Uh, uh, you said the skateboarding thing. I saw that you used to do a lot of skateboarding. Are you doing much with the boys?
Nah, I learned my lesson. I'm definitely the way my body has been designed, as you age, it does not work the same way. So uh I'm I'm just I'm like one of the coaches who tells the players all the stuff they used to do back in their day, but they never do any of it. I'm one of those type of people. So yeah.
Well, you're a tall dude too, so, like, if you're on
Yeah,
that skateboard and you go down at this point, like, it gets worse. Like, there's a these kids are short. You got a ways to go, man.
right. That's right. I got a ways to go, and I don't heal as fast. So it's not worth it. So, I'm enjoying the view.
There's talk to me a little bit about. There's a lot going on in our country right now, and a lot of division. The Super Bowl's coming up, so, like, weigh in here, take a stand. Who's gonna win, man? Who's gonna win?
Oh my gosh. Um, I think it's an amazing feat for Tom Brady to just jump on a completely new team and take them to the Super Bowl. So anything's possible with Tom Brady, but at the same time, the Chiefs just look amazing. I mean, they're just a phenomenal team. So um, I I'm I'm hoping the Chiefs get a W, but I won't be shocked if they don't, just because Tom Brady's like Superman. So that's yeah.
Okay. You're still walking that line of trying not to piss anybody off on
I'm
that. Like,
hoping the Chiefs do it. I
okay,
really am.
okay.
I'm hoping the Chiefs do it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I was watching something like I'm not a big sports guy. Like in my family, my wife watches football. Um,
Oh,
she's
mine
she
too.
she's the one that's like, okay, we're gonna get the NFL package. I'm like the what? Okay, whatever. Her and her dad get on the phone and talk about games. They're for Chicago though, so they've been unhappy for a long time. Um, anyway, but I saw this like somebody commenting like this was a thing about Tom Brady going up and like hugging and kissing his boys, and and I'm do we not have anything better to talk about?
No, no, we
Like
don't.
what's the deal? Like
We
a
don't. We're
dad.
sitting at home in a pandemic. We need something new every second. Every second, we need something new to talk about. This is crazy out here, man. It's
Dude,
crazy.
social media is this animal that like it was like it's like a bad movie. You know, like you see this, like you get this little like tiny bear cub and you're like, oh, it's so cute, and you have it in your home, and like 2 days later it grows up and demolishes the house. Like I feel like that's social media right now. Like it was cute and fun, and we shared pictures of each other, and we remember when people used to share pictures of food, like that was the big thing, and people were like, stop sharing pictures of food. Now it's like gone into this thing that we can't control anymore. It's ridiculous.
It's wild, man. It's funny. I like that example you gave. I think of it like letting your kids argue and not interrupting, just letting them go for it, and then just
Right.
letting them keep going and going and going and see where it ends. That's what it feels like to me. It's like, oh, who knows where this will end? You know what I
And then
mean?
feeding them a lot of sugar in the process. Like, here, have some, go nuts.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
I
It
was
is
thinking about
crazy.
this. Hey, welcome, Katrine. Good to have you here. By the way, if you got questions for Lecrae, put them in the chat. I think it's hilarious because, like, if you and your wife and me and my wife, and we've never met before this, I don't think, but if we got together and like, okay, let's have a dinner party, get some people over. You invited a couple friends, they invited some friends. Same thing on my side. So we get 8, 10, 12 couples together without even having to talk about it, without me having to say, hey, Lecrae, by the way, Jackie's coming over and she's crazy. I don't know you, Jackie, but I'm just gonna use for illustration. Like she'd come in the door and you'd meet her, you'd be like, oh, she's that one. And like we'd never, you'd talk with her, you'd be nice, and you'd go, okay, she's got some weird views, and I'm not gonna worry about it. But on social media, we cannot filter people out that are like, oh, that's weird Uncle Harry. Like everybody's got a weird Uncle Harry that you
Yeah.
get them together and you're like, yeah, that's cool, but we're not gonna actually, no one pays attention to him. But on social media, everybody pays attention to Uncle Harry. Everybody gets in a fight. Uncle Harry bombs you on a comment, and everybody just like suddenly you've got this thing that's blown up all over the place. It's crazy how it feels so different there.
It's wild too because sometimes, sometimes like it's funny. My wife is always the one who's like more investigative, and so someone will say something like really wild or crazy, just something like out of blue sky, like you know, I don't know, just total disrespectful. And you're like, whoa, this is out of line. And I'm like, I can't believe this person would say this. And my wife is like, babe, they're 11. And I'm like, there we go. There we go. Of
That
course.
makes sense.
It's perfect. I
100%.
get it. That's why they would say something crazy like that because they're 11. So yeah, it's wild, man. It's but it's funny. I remember, see, back in my day, we had message boards. We didn't
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
social media. We had message boards. And I remember being a message board kid who would like say something crazy to get a response from somebody who's on a message board, like, you came to town and you didn't even speak when I was there. You're not real. And then and they'd be like, man, I'm so sorry I didn't see you. And I'd be like, oh, they said that. So they spoke to me. They spoke to me. So I totally get it, man. Social media just gets the most of us.
Dude, so like, but there's something about social media in you, and I don't mean to like throw you under a bus here, but like everybody loves to hate on Lecrae on social media. Like there was the whole thing that happened in the interview with the guy who talked about white blessing instead of white privilege, and like Black Twitter tore up. Evangelicals have loved to murder Lecrae on social media. Like, you can't get a break from anybody. Like,
No,
they all coming for Lecrae. You're like, look, I got Grammys behind me. Can we chill? Can we talk? No, we're coming at you, bro.
no, I've gotten used to it. I get canceled every week. I'm like a bad sitcom. You know what I'm saying? It's like I get canceled every week, and then it's like, you know what, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back again. That might be good. It might be good this time around. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. And then people forget, and then they're like, we don't like this about them. But I've been getting canceled since I started. Honestly, like, it was crazy because if you think of, like, when I first started, it was like, oh, he's got tattoos. You can't love God and have tattoos. That's when it was like a bad thing. And it was like, oh,
Right.
we don't like this. Wait, he's rapping. You can't rap and be a follower of God at the same time. It doesn't make sense. And then it turned into like, who's he collaborating with? Oh my gosh, how can he do this? And so it just kept going and going and going. And over time, I've just gotten used to it. It's like, it's this weird. It's this weird phenomenon that just continues to keep going on and on and on. So, I got a great counselor, a great therapist, and my therapist is like, keep it coming, because I get paid every time somebody cancels Lecrae, so keep it going.
Dude, I got to talk. I call him my friend that I pay. And I don't know how it'd still be standing if I did not have my counselor. I mean, a lot of people have felt that. I mean, not to the extent that you have, being a public figure, but a lot of people, go through that. You get hammered on social media, whatever. And it's social media highlights it, but being in this place, how do you handle? There's always going to be a hater. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't look at the whole picture, doesn't
Right.
look at the real you, whatever it is. And as I dive into, I love this project community. And it's a lot of people that don't fit in anywhere else, listen to music that nobody else understands, all this kind of stuff. What's your, how do you get through it and still stay standing? And I
Yeah.
know that it hasn't always been easy, like, how do you move through that?
Yeah, I think there's good days and bad days. I think, when at first I was very disoriented and I didn't know what was going on, and you're absorbing it all, and when you absorb it, it really
It
starts
really
to
starts
speak
to
to
speak
you,
to you.
and in a negative way, right? And then you learn that in leadership, if you call shots, you're gonna take shots. That's just the reality of being a leader. You just can't get to a place where you're impactful, you're changing things, and people respect it. We love to build people up in order to tear them down. That's just what we do as a society, as human beings. It's like we love to LeBron is overrated. He's overrated. He's not this, he's not that. And that's, what I learned to do was to really start listening to the voices that knew me more consistently, right? Listening to those voices, because those voices are the voices that care about me, that care about my well-being. And sometimes they say hard things to me, but I know that at the end of the day, they love me and they want the best for me. So it's easier to listen to those people when they say the hard things to me. When there's some random stranger on the street who walks up to you and is like, man, you're a terrible dad. It's like, what? You don't even know. Like, why would you believe this person? He doesn't even know you. So it's kind of like, don't take it to heart. This is a stranger who doesn't know you and has found a way to make their opinion known. And you just have to say, man, block it out. And practically what I do a lot of times is, post and go, post and go. And I know it just kills the haters because they're like, I said I burned them. And then it's like, I didn't even see it, champ. You know what I mean? Like, I get text message people like, hey, you doing all right today, man? I'm like, yeah, what's going on? Oh, I just saw everything that was being said. And I'm like, I have no idea what's being said. I'm having a Nerf gun fight with my boys, so I don't know what's going on.
Don't tell me, I don't want to know.
Right.
Texting me, they're killing me right now. You've always been, um, in this unique place. Like you mentioned it earlier, you started out like, people are like, you can't rap and love Jesus, you can't have tattoos and love Jesus. You've all, and then in the hip hop world, Like you're this strange, like, wait, but you're not living this same life either.
Yeah.
You've always walked that line of being an, to steal the word, an outsider, an anomaly. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like there's a lot of people who are believers who are like trying to figure out the Jesus thing who feel that way. Like I can't go with all of the church stuff and the culture of church, but I
Mhm.
don't fit in outside of it either. Like, how have you made peace with that reality of, look, the easy molds, the easy boxes don't work for me.
Yeah. I tend to look at it like everybody has a box, right? Like if there's four boxes, especially like for Christians, there's like these four boxes, and bottom box is like distinct, and I am a believer and I'm unashamed, and you're gonna know it, you're gonna see it. Another bottom box is you know changing, letting the world see my light, and I'm gonna shine bright, and they're gonna know where I stand, and we're gonna kind of create our own world, and this is where you can find hope and healing in this space. And then you got a top box of like, we may not say it, but we're gonna do awesome things to serve people, and we're gonna love people. And then another top box would be like, um, we're just going to influence the world by how well we do our job and how polite and courteous and generous we are with our money. And I think everyone thinks their box is the right box when really it's a circle where you're just constantly living in all those boxes at any given time. And when you think your way is the way, then you tend to hate the other boxes. And you're like, oh, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it so wrong. And for me, I just try to make a lap around, and be consistent in every space. There's some times where I got to be distinct and different. And then there's times where I have to be, hey, I have a special space, over here. And if you're in hip hop and you're hurting and you're broken, this space exists and it's different. But then there's other times where it's like, man, I'm just going to be really generous and kind, and I'm going to just demonstrate love towards you. And then there's other times where it's like, I'm just be really good at my craft, and I'm going to, just really shine bright by being a good steward. And I think the outside world looks in at that and says, wow, that is attractive. That is appealing, for different reasons for different people. And that's why I just try to keep making my laps around. And I'm always, somebody's not going to like it, at some point in time, but that's what I just try to keep doing.
That's awesome. That's cool. Um, and I want to just say to you how much I appreciate you being in that space. Um, because I see hip hop artists, I see different people fighting, letting those boxes try to define them and trying to
Mm-hmm.
force them into one. And
Yeah.
your journey, even as I look at your journey, um, I think I first saw you at Winter Jam or Rock and Worship Roadshow, one of those, coming through, and went, okay, wow, I got to check Lecrae out, and had the albums, listened to the music, all the stuff. But you've been on such a transparent journey figuring all of that out for yourself.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think somehow we think as soon as somebody's got a record deal, that they've got their junk together, like their crap is all lined up, and they've got, and you're this guy from Texas that has just walked through the journey that most of us go through in some way of figuring out our own journey and our faith and who we are. You've just done it on this big scale,
Right.
where everybody watches it, everybody wants to, and nobody can handle that scrutiny all the time, because there's
Right.
times that we've got to step back and figure out our journey with God. So I want to thank you for the transparency and the realness of doing that, because I think a lot of people are afraid to be that real, especially when
Mhm.
you're like, well, what are the haters going to do? How's that going to impact record sales? How's that going to impact my career? All that stuff. And you've been kind of, especially with your book and the restoration project, very honest about, man, my faith got deeply challenged.
Mhm.
Um, my journey with God. And I'd love for you to take us a little bit into that, because I think it's so real. And I think so many of us have been on that thing and we've just been afraid to say it, or we haven't been able to find the words to say, yeah, I've been on this weird thing and everything I found didn't work, didn't make sense to me.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think many of us end up in a place where we come to faith, we're walking with God, and then it seems like all the things that I was doing don't seem to have the same effect. Like that mountaintop high I had, it's like something's not clicking. And you start asking questions, and what most people end up, they get to a place in that wrestle where they learn like, oh, there was a deeper level I had to go to in my relationship with God. There was something new I needed to switch up. It was like, oh, I needed to start, maybe I needed to go, I don't know, learn Hebrew or something. You know what I mean? It's, I needed to take it to a different place in order for it's like a relationship, for our relationship to get deeper. And for me, I think what happened is when I got to that moment, people did not, they didn't want to give me the space to process it. So they're like, keep giving us what you've always given us. And I'm like, well, wait, I don't know where I'm at right now. And when you say that transparently, people are like, oh boy, he's losing it. And truthfully, it's like, well, I'm trying to wrestle. And for me, in that time period of trying to wrestle with, okay, why are there so many divisions and disagreements and what's going on? And there's inconsistencies in the church. What I did was I let, people wounds become God wounds. And instead of just understanding that this is how people act because they're broken and they're fallen people, I blamed God for it all. So I was like, well, I don't want to mess with God if this is how this whole God thing is going to be. And so that was a tough place. And when you're a leader and you have access to other leaders and they're not giving you any clarity either, you're like, well, see, it must be true. This is a disaster. Um, and the thing is, God is faithful, and God held my hand and walked me through it. But that was a journey, and everyone had to watch that unfold with me publicly. And so, people are not always as gracious when they see it happening. But sometimes they are. Sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they are. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it was never about the public perception of me. It was always about how my relationship with God was, and that's intact, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, 100%. That's powerful. We talked about a little earlier about going to counseling. What was kind of your journey that started you going, okay, I need to, it's time for me to deal with stuff like that's not the persona of men. That's not the persona of a lot of times Christians, hip hop. Like it doesn't fit a lot of the boxes. So what was your kind of, what led for you going into that?
Yeah, I just, I was dealing with a lot of public scrutiny, a lot of backlash, and it's so funny because I don't even remember what it was over now. I mean, it's been so many different things, but I can't even remember. But I just remember feeling like, man, I just feel like it never ends, and I was like, it's starting to get to me, and it's making me bitter, and it's making me frustrated, and it's challenging my faith. And I was like, I need some help, but I didn't know how to approach counseling. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't have any. So it was kind of like, you have to really give it some time to take effect. And, counseling's like dating, you got to, find the right person for you. And so I just didn't understand all those things. So, I went trying to learn and trying to get some perspective. Um, and I had to start processing. And I remember one of the best things that, one of the most key things that the counselor said to me was that, two broken people don't make a whole person. Talking about my parents and me, is like two broken people don't just make a whole person. I don't know why you would think that your upbringing with two broken people would somehow result in you being whole. you have issues historically that you need to process and deal with. And I was like, whoa, never thought about that. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Mm, that's awesome. That's powerful. I found that, I mean, yeah, I've been through a lot of that journey of, like you said, you got to find the right person. Um, Get to break up with a couple people like this, it didn't work. Um, I've been down that journey, and I appreciate that because I think there still is that stigma of
Right.
like, oh, but if you break your leg, you go to the hospital. Like it's not a thing. Um, you
Absolutely.
need help. You got to have people, and you got to have people that can speak into your life truth, especially when you're. Well, I don't think it matters. I mean, yeah, leadership, 100%, but just doing life, like we all are leaders. We all are spouses, or in relationship, and the stuff comes up like it just does.
Yeah.
Um, it's been a very weird. Um, last year, 2020 was like notorious for being a bad year. And then 2021 arrived, and I remember New Year's Eve, it was like, okay, it's a new year. And it was like 2021 looked at 2020 and said, here, hold my beer. Let's see if we can go worse on this. And then we had January 6th. And I remember I was sitting in my office, and I'd actually been streaming. I kind of wanted to see, I'm a little bit of a political junkie. So I'm like, I wanted to see how all the um, going through and ratifying the electoral votes was going and all that stuff. So I got it up on another monitor, and suddenly like they're cutting in and out, and you hear them say something about gas mask. I'm like, what's going on? So I start streaming other news channels and start seeing what happened with the insurrection. What was it like for you? Like watching that journey. Um, like what was your story in that?
Yeah. I think, I mean, just candidly, I feel like, um, I I think we have a wonderful nation. I think I'm grateful to be here. Um, but at the same time, it's still broken, right? Because it's full of broken people. And I think that oftentimes when you're disenfranchised, whether that is because of, your ethnicity or your class, your social status, it's a little bit easier to see. um it- you have a better view of the field where power is creating um uh more disenfranchisement, right? So it's kind of like being on a baseball field. If I'm in the outfield, I can see the field, right? I have a good perspective, but I don't have the same perspective as I would have if I'm, up to bat. And I think everyone has unique vantage points where they can see things from on the field. And I think for me, I'm constantly in prisons and dealing with folks in disenfranchised communities. I come from it. So I had been seeing this rise of what I would say is nationalism at the cost of humanity, just bubbling, 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 bubbling. Like the
Mhm.
nation, the nation, the nation is the most important thing. Well, what is it more important than? Is it more important than the actual people in it? And so what I was seeing is, man, this looks like the outcome of folks who've been feeling like, you know, the nation is in trouble and we'll do whatever it takes to make sure the nation stays stable. And what I would say is that for me, I think that this is the biggest struggle, especially coming from a Christian perspective. The biggest struggle is that we have all, in many different ways, different groups more so than others, bitten the bait that the empire is better than the kingdom. The
Mm,
empire is more important than the kingdom, right? There was a Roman Empire, there was a Babylonian Empire. America is just another empire. It's not the kingdom. The kingdom is what's most important. And so I always tell the story of Ben-Hur, where he's a Jew, and the Romans want him to participate in these Olympic Games, and he's like, we don't do that. And they're like, well, you're going to have to do it if you want to be, you want us to take care of the Jews in this society. And so eventually the Jews start taking part in this Olympic game. Well, Ben-Hur ends up winning, and the Jews have beaten the Romans at their own game. And they asked the Roman leader, "Are you sad that you've lost to the Jews?" And he says, "No, I'm glad because now they're playing our game." And I think that's the way the enemy works
Mm.
is he's saying, "I don't care. I don't care if you know you win or lose. I just want you to play this game. Stop thinking about the kingdom. Only think about the empire." And we can tend to make our empire our kingdom, and I think that's the biggest problem I see happening in our nation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's profound. Um, I mean, you're dead on because it feels like we've forgotten about the empire. I mean, we've forgotten about the kingdom. We've forgotten about the bigger reality. And I see so many people battling it out. And what breaks my heart is I see people going, I remember I saw a post from a friend, a guy that I've done ministry with and worked with in the past. And he's like, those people, doesn't
Mhm.
matter which stripe, can't compromise with them, can't talk to them, can't anything.
Yeah.
I'm going, what does the first couple years in heaven look like with that attitude, and how is it if what our job is here, Jesus said to make disciples, and like you said, there's those four boxes, and you can say, is that the preacher, is that the guy who's giving his money, whatever. But if what we're supposed to be building is loving other people and helping others, how is that what we're doing for the empire,
Mm.
blocking our impact for the kingdom?
Ooh.
Because now people are seeing that and they're not seeing my heart. And I struggle with it because some of this stuff gets me going, right?
Mhm.
um I'm my family's a biracial family. My wife is biracial, her first two kids from a different husband, biracial. They're my kids now. There was DNA that transferred at the wedding. A couple years ago they asked me to adopt them. It's awesome. And then we got two more, so I've got the shades going on in my family. It's awesome. Um and so I look at that moment, and there's a moment that just devastated me. And I've talked about it on the radio. People who listen to the morning show know this story, but I'm watching this scene. I'm watching these pictures that are flooding in, and I'm seeing a guy with a Confederate flag striding through the Capitol.
Yeah.
And I lived in Texas. I went to school in Tennessee. Like, I've heard all it's cultural, it's our heritage stuff.
Mhm.
But to me, I look at that, and you're talking about my daughters. You're
Mm.
talking about my daughters should be, I'm as white as it gets, especially with this light on my face, but I'm a white middle-aged dude. I'm about as set as it is. But I look at my daughters and some of the challenges that they faced.
Yeah.
And I'm going, you're telling me you want them back in the field. You're telling me that as a white man married to a brown-skinned woman, that I'm suspect,
Yeah.
right? That doesn't have a place. And yet my calling for the kingdom is bigger. And yet my calling to help the disenfranchised, my family's fine, but there's a lot of people that have been so impacted by this division. And then people come and they tell me, well, Brian, you're talking about race, but you're dividing us more because you're saying that's a black person. I'm like, yeah, because that reality is different.
Sure.
Because nobody sat in school with any other kid except my daughter and said, you need to move all of that ethnicity out of my country. Like, that just happened to my daughter. That didn't happen to you white people.
Right.
And I'm a white guy. So, I mean, I get it on the other side. So, and then to keep that in context with, I got to help these people. I got to love people well and the disenfranchised. And yet the kingdom is the thing, but that
Mm.
kingdom includes folks that my people
Yeah.
so easily overlook out of ignorance. And we live in Idaho. So, oh my word, we have no diversity here whatsoever. And so we have a lot of ignorance. In fact, one of my favorite stories, someday, you talk about going to weird places, you go to jails and all kinds of cool stuff with your concerts. Someday you got to come to Idaho. I mean, we're disenfranchised in a different way. We just have no diversity. We need help. Um, but Project 88.7 does this concert, and it's this epic concert we do every year, at the end of a wave pool. It's called Last Splash of Summer. And y'all's management teams, they're awesome, but they don't communicate with you worth anything. And so every artist that we've brought in walks around the corner and sees the stage and goes, you can just see it. They don't see it. They're too professional, but you can see their face. It goes, you want me to perform there? The stage is 12 feet deep and 60 feet wide. So you got a drum riser and you can hardly get around in front of it. So KB was out a couple years ago And it was so funny because same thing. He's like, really? And so he does a show, but the kids are literally in a wave pool. Like there's people floating in inner tubes. So you're not going to have a more lit show than this one that ever that you're going to perform for ever. These people are crazy. It is the funnest show. So KB comes over to the side of the stage during the show, and he's like, "Get my phone." So runner goes over, gets the phone, brings it back. We hand it to KB. He goes out, does the selfie on stage, all that kind of stuff. Comes over and he's like, "Here, video me." I'm like, okay. So I'm like, he wants to send it to his wife. This is the weirdest show he's ever done. Put it on social media, whatever. So I follow him out on stage. I'm videoing. He gets into the song, puts the mic down, goes to the edge of the stage, and jumps into the water. And
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which made the Roaring Springs people really unhappy because everybody was splashing around and kids were going underwater and they're afraid of them being trampled and stuff. I'm like, if a kid dies, it's for a good cause, whatever. And but this kid, this cute little white girl comes up to him and he's dripping wet, and he's got the braids, everything, and she's like, "Can I touch your hair?" and, and KB, I don't know him that well. You know him a lot better, but KB doesn't play, is my impression. And he's very, very nicely, he just says, "You don't ask that. You don't ask that." And it was this perfect moment of education because we don't know here. Like we don't know what we don't know
Right.
because we live in this bubble. And so it's a weird world, especially looking back over the past year with all of the racial stuff. And I want to ask this question, and I know that it gets tiring to educate us white people. I know that it gets tiring, but but what I want to ask, if you're willing, and if it's, and I respect if not, but give us just a picture of what we don't see from our perspective that you experience on a day-to-day basis. While you're thinking of it, I watched a thing with Andy Stanley a couple years ago, and he did a forum, and he brought up a couple black guys on stage, and he's like, "Tell me about what it was when you taught your kids how to drive." And they went through this whole thing: keep your hands on the wheel, don't reach for anything, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, "That's weird because I just told my kids to find a safe place to pull over." And like when I heard that, I went, "Yeah, my reality is different."
Mhm.
Not, and I'm not to, I don't have guilt for that. It's just the recognition that my reality is different.
Mhm.
So if you're willing, bring us into that reality that we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, well, I think some of it is unconscious bias, right? Like some of it is things that people don't realize they think subconsciously. And so, you know, there is a subconscious perspective or bias that people have about ethnic groups. And so if you're white, you probably are not thinking about how you're perceived because of your ethnicity, because most of the time you're around people who look just like you. And so just think of it from the standpoint of if you walk into a restaurant and you're the only white person in there, what are you thinking then? Like, what is your perspective if you're the only white person in there? Some people are like, oh, I wouldn't think anything. I'll just order my food. Maybe that's you. But most people would be thinking, okay, I'm the only white person in here. Maybe you're feeling uncomfortable because you don't see any familiarity. Maybe you're scared because all you've seen are, certain perspectives of Black people or Hispanic, whatever the ethnicity may be in that place. But for minorities, and I can speak as a Black person, we are always aware of the fact that we're different. We're always the only one of us in the room at any given moment. And so we're always having to process the way people are perceiving us. Did they treat me like this because they're having a bad day? Or is it because of my ethnicity? You're always having to process that. Did she clutch her purse because I'm tall and I'm a man, or because I'm Black? And it's just a reality that you're constantly having to think through all the time. And then, it goes, there's levels to it just because of the perception that people have. Where I remember somebody saying to me, man, I didn't know you talked so well. And I was like, what does it mean to talk well? You know what I mean? Like, what does that mean? and why are you surprised that I, who am an American like you, went to public school like you, speak and use English? You know what I mean? So those are just normal things that we're constantly having to process and think through. When I would go on tours, there would be like, hey, we want to make sure that you and your posse can play basketball. I'm sure you guys like basketball. And I would say, why? You know, and so it's just there's just
Right.
these constant assumptions and constant things that we're thinking through all the time, because we just have to. You've got to think through it all the time because I can't erase my skin tone. It's not that we worship our color; it's that our color is loud wherever we go. In America. And I would just say something else. Just something that we don't see ourselves consistently. So when I get on a plane, um, when I look at movies on a plane, there's probably one or two movies that have a strong Black lead character, right? So I don't see myself consistently, which can make you say, well, man, I'm not interesting. I don't matter. I'm not as important or as American or whatever it may be. And then you're scrutinized when you get excited about seeing yourself. So it's like Black Panther, yay. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, why are you guys so excited? It's just a movie. Like, you guys worship your skin. It's like, no, we have never had a character, So same way you're excited about Eminem, we're excited about Black Panther. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
that's
now
just.
you went there. Now you went there.
But yeah, that's something that I would say, is just one of the things that is a constant.
How do we bridge the divide? How do we I mean, we're always going to see that difference, but how do we lessen that? Um, yeah.
Yeah.
How do we come together?
Well, I think you already kind of alluded to it. You're so close in proximity that you're able to see things from a different perspective, right? It's proximity. Proximity changes everything. It's having relationships with people that's really going to change everything. People say, yeah, I have a Black friend, but it really, you mean you have an associate or someone that you see maybe regularly, but they're not a part of your inner circle.
Mm.
um and so what does your proximity really look like? Look at the Facebook friends you interact with on a consistent basis. Like, proximity makes a difference. It changes where you're sitting on the baseball field. It's like, I've sat in the batter's box now. I know it looks different. And something that's happened for me is a good friend of mine, Terrence Lester, he works with people who are experiencing homelessness. And he just took me on a tour. And I got proximity, not just feeding people, not just helping, but like hanging out, hearing stories, walking, spending time. And you learn their story. There's not a story. They're different people with different things going on, and you now have a better understanding of how someone ends up in homelessness. And so that's what I would say is proximity would change everything.
Lecrae, thanks for hanging out with us, man. I've kept you longer than I promised, and this has been awesome. Honestly, we really got to get you out here to Idaho again. It's been too long when everything lifts. And man, thank you for your transparency. Thank you for being um, for putting out the music that you do. It's powerful. Drown, I think, has been for me was one of the anthems of 2020, and I appreciated it so much. Anything finally you want to talk about? You want to make sure that we highlight before we wrap up?
No, man, I appreciate you all. Make sure you listen to Restoration, grab the book, I Am Restored, and stay tuned for Church Close Forest on the way.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you
All right,
so much.
much love. God bless.
Take care.